welcome. Tonight could be an exciting show. It's the first one after the election, and we're talking to the Liberal View staff here, or staff or people.
I'd love to be a staff. What's it worth to you?
Why don't we start with introductions?
Okay. I'm Rand Barthel, and I live in Mendon, and I'm a member of the Democratic Town Committee in Mendon, and I'm also a member of the 350 Mass Climate Action Network.
I'm Christine Crane. I'm a member of the Milford Democratic Town Committee, a state committee member, and part of Drinking Liberally.
And my name is Glenn Wyke. I'm a Milford resident, and I am on the Milford Democratic Town Committee. I am currently the treasurer.
Now, Drinking Liberally, you got to explain what that's about, because it's not about drinking.
Well, no. It's about liberals promoting democracy one pint at a time. Just a little play on words, but liberals getting together, talking issues and politics.
It could be more like meeting liberally.
Yeah, but it's more fun to say drinking liberally.
But nobody wants to drink conservatively, so.
That is true.
We drink liberally but responsibly.
Okay, Glenn, we'll give you your first out of the gate to talk about what happened with the election.
Okay. So there are some basic things that happened. Of course, there's always misogyny and racism and all that other stuff. But that was baked into the election cake already. What I saw happen, and there's certainly a lot of things to talk about here, but there was a lot of enthusiasm. Well, first of all, Joe Biden probably stayed in way too long. He was pretty deeply unpopular. He could not communicate his policies or what he had done for the country, didn't feel he needed to. And when he had that one debate performance, everybody saw that it was time for him to go. And so thankfully he did go, but that didn't leave Kamala Harris a lot of time to get the word out there. However, there was a lot of excitement for Kamala once she got out there. But I think a series of things that happened afterwards kind of dampened enthusiasm. You know, we don't know all of what had happened during the election yet. That's going to be studied for quite some time. But one thing we can say is that Trump's vote share, a number of votes, did not go up necessarily. They were about the same as they were in 2020. What did happen is that the Democrats lost a lot of voters. And so then the question is why? Was it just enthusiasm? I think that played a big part, especially in places like Michigan, where there's a large Muslim population, and they were looking for some kind of concession on the war in Gaza. I think there were issues with the campaign. I thought it was very bizarre that they embraced Liz Cheney and trotted her out as if she was going to get them a lot of votes, either from moderate Republicans. It just didn't work, clearly. I think, in fact, I think it helped depress a lot of turnout, personally. I think that's what happened.
So it's more that you lost Democratic voters altogether, not that
some
they
of them
shifted
certainly,
over.
yeah. And I think generally she does a very good job when she speaks off the cuff, but I think the Democratic consultants got into her head, and she was afraid, number one, to articulate a vision that was separate from the things that Joe Biden had done, but also was afraid to go out on a limb and talk about policy too much. And so the things that could have kept people together was talking more about policy, the things that she wanted to do. And she did talk about a few things, but I think it got overwhelmed with the rest of her message.
Fundamental question that hit me with her is when they said, well, I liked when she said, I am not Joe Biden. I'm my own person. Okay. But then they said, well, what would you do different? And when she said, nothing comes to mind. Well,
yeah, that was what I was thinking. After, making the switch, that should have been like the first question that they answered. They should have had a stock answer to give for that. You don't have to insult Joe Biden to give a decent answer for that. And
Yeah.
I just don't understand why they didn't have a clever answer.
You would say something along the lines of, here is what I want to do to build on what he started.
Yeah.
And it's going to be different it's going to be stuff that he didn't get to, or that maybe he wouldn't have done if he had run, but I'm going to propose to do this.
And you
And-
brought up the first debate, or the only debate. I walked away scared
Yeah.
to say, he's got his thumb on the nuclear trigger.
Yeah. That guy.
That guy, Joe Biden, who just showed me
Oh, you're
that he's
talking about-
not
yeah.
all there. At least that was my impression. Has his thumb on the nuclear trigger. That's
I-
a scary movie.
You know, I was
The
scared from the standpoint that
having Trump on
yes,
it.
he's diminished.
That scares me even more.
Yeah, definitely.
Trump, I think it would be an act of commission. I'm scared that Biden would be omission.
I was afraid that
Something like
he
that,
couldn't
yeah.
he couldn't articulate his positions at all. Even the easy and stock answers he was flubbing, and that is really deeply concerning. And why didn't we know this situation beforehand? I think that's a question that I haven't heard an adequate answer for.
Well, I think Harris started out with 2 strikes against her, if I could use a sports term.
And one of which was having about 100 days to assemble this.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And-
All of a sudden,
Now, what she did in those 100 days was actually pretty remarkable. She did considerably better than Biden would have done, in my view. And
Trump
she
didn't
actually,
win by much.
yeah, and she actually started down the path that had she started much earlier to talk about the real drivers of economic pain in this country, like the high cost and unavailability of housing, the high cost of education and health care. If she had started on that sooner and had hit it harder longer, that would have been the right way to approach the issue of people's economic pain.
She could
Is
have
to say,
also-
look,
I'm sorry.
we had a burst of inflation. We did some things that have brought it under control, but there is still economic pain out there. These are the main things that hurt the most in my talking to people around the country. This is what's killing people the most. We're going to mount a frontal assault on those things, and try to
well, but think
make
about
things
it.
better.
In 2 years, the odds are Trump will lose the House or the Senate.
Both, if we can.
One can only
Well,
hope.
I'm just saying, forget whether you like Trump, you don't like Trump. Look at history. The sitting presidential party,
Midterms usually.
midterms, because all of a sudden you came in saying, well, let's see, this is the second week of January, and the war in the Ukraine will be over in 2
Right.
weeks.
Yeah.
We'll be counting.
The Gaza will be done. I mean, you look and you say the campaign rhetoric.
So what is it about Trump making all these like outrageous promises and flowery rhetoric, and the Democrats try to be too realistic, and we don't step out of the box enough. We don't push on that. And Trump comes out and says, day one, we're going to get this, and we're going to lower prices and do all this, and people buy into it without any fact, without any support behind it, without any kind of direction or how are you going to get there. Nobody questions that. And the Democrats, we're too pragmatic.
Well, I've said from the beginning, I think Trump is his own worst enemy. Because if he kept his mouth shut and didn't make these incredible
And
claims,
he wouldn't get elected, probably.
well, maybe that's the problem. He wouldn't get elected. But
He,
I'm going to solve the Russian problem in 2
Did he
weeks.
keep any of his promises from the last time he was president?
what did he promise?
He promised the border. He promised the wall in Mexico was going to pay for it. What else did he promise? There were a number of things.
He
that
promised to scrap Obamacare.
Yeah, he promised health care.
He actually
We would
tried
have
to
better
do
health
that.
care than we had. And then he punted on, he talked about it and then he punted on it.
Well, I think a lot of it is, it's easy. Let's face it, I can say I'm young, thin, and have hair. I can say it all I want. Reality, fat old bald man. It's simple. Trump can make an outrageous claim, but can he put it through?
And when are people going to start seeing that, though? I mean, people you
Well-
talk to saying, oh, no, Trump did a lot. Well, what did he do?
I think he brags a lot, and people assume that he's actually recounting his achievements rather than just BSing. And I think that's a serious issue.
Well, there's some stuff that I just don't, I mean,
Yeah.
not that you would ever hear this because it's on Fox News, but buy Trump watches.
And they're made in Minnesota somewhere.
Well, but wait a minute. The guy is wealthy beyond necessity.
supposedly.
Supposedly. I think that's likely not true.
He lives in a house bigger than mine,
He
It
does.
doesn't matter.
That doesn't mean he's a real billionaire.
That's right.
but you know, I got a kick out of when they went after Kris Jenner's daughter, saying she's not a billionaire, she's only worth $900 million. Still seems pretty good to me. He's living in a house that's arguably much more expensive than any house in Milford.
Yeah.
He spends money at warp speed, so he's not doing too terrible. He may not be as good as he
Either that or
brags.
he's just one step ahead of the, trying to.
One step ahead of the banks.
There
He
you
is
go.
pretty
I
highly
mean,
leveraged, yes.
Right.
He sells his name. He sells his
But
brand.
he's selling Trump watches.
Yeah.
He's selling Trump sneakers.
Is that the $120,000 watches?
I looked it up on the internet, and some of the watches were $40.
Oh, okay.
Because when
Yeah,
he
it's a
said
different
it's the
watch.
best watch made, I'm saying, okay, so it's better than Rolexes that cost you $10,000 to $20,000 to $50,000. What average person can put out
Yeah,
that kind of money for a watch?
right.
During the campaign, he put out these $120,000
Right.
watches, these collector's items, allegedly. But they weren't particularly good. But that
No.
wasn't really the point. I think the point was that very wealthy people could use that to bribe him.
Well, it's the
Right.
same thing we had on the other side with buying paintings from Hunter Biden. Both sides played this game. Now I don't like it either way. This idea of a $50 watch, okay, it's a $50 watch or a $100 watch.
Yeah.
One side plays the
But-
game with a couple of additional zeros added.
But you're
to
also
the-
looking at the fact that you say the best watch.
By whose standards?
Most people would say Rolex. Rolex watches are terrible timepieces.
Now, this watch is probably better than a Rolex.
I guarantee every 3 years I have to have my watch cleaned at $600 a shot.
Yeah.
They'd loan me a watch.
I could buy
It's-
2 of these new for that.
But the thing is, they loan me a watch that's quartz, that keeps time within seconds a month, and the real Rolex keeps minutes.
Well, it's a status symbol.
It's a piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
So for him to say it's the best watch, by what standards?
Yeah.
What about his Bible? Do you have one?
Trump has a Bible?
Doesn't he
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
Bible?
yes, Bible.
There's a
Yes.
there's a Trump Bible.
Yeah.
You mean the art of the deal, or?
No,
No,
an
literally
actual
a Bible.
Bible
A
printed
Bible.
in China that has like Trump his signature on it or
Yeah.
some such thing.
So why did most of the country vote for him?
No, most of the country didn't vote for him. 1.7% more of the people who bothered to vote
That's-
voted for him.
The majority.
It is a majority. It is a rather slender majority. We have seen much bigger majorities before
One or
on
two
both
people
sides.
more. Well, the electoral
couple-
college would change that, but I
That's
mean,
right.
when you look at it, and you say
A
he
few
did
people
get-
per precinct. A few people per precinct
Yeah.
would have made it different.
Yeah.
So
But somehow, it used to be the people in the center of the country, the red square states, followed him religiously. I think they still do.
Probably.
oh, they do.
But this time, it seemed like a lot of people shifted over away from the Democratic Party.
I'll say one group of people that shifted away were certain groups of Latinos and Black people, and they were largely Christian, and they have very specific beliefs about women being in charge or
Anxiety about transgender people. and
yeah, that
stuff
kind
like
of thing.
that.
And so those people migrated to Trump.
That was the other boogeyman, transgender.
Mm-hmm.
What's the percentage of transgender people in this country? how much of an issue is that really, or did they inflate it to kind of get, Christians and
Well,
other
it's
conservative-
emotional, because they talk about the dirty
Right.
old man
Well, that's
going
like-
into a little girl's bathroom.
Right.
Or I don't want my daughter competing against a man in sports, and it's like, how many are there? Ohio got rid of transgender kids in sports in their state. How many were there?
So I'm going to vote for that
One. There was one
dirty old man
in the
who
whole
took
state.
that woman into that dressing room and tried to rape
Because
her.
Yeah, but
there's
you know,
no regular heterosexual men that ever assault women.
No, of course not.
Of course not.
But the whole issue there
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
is different from having men compete in women's sports. I have a soft spot for the women who work their backsides off. And I remember my daughter coaches a swim team for the Special Olympics. We go to Harvard to their pool, and they have all the stats of the top women and all the stats of the top. There's a difference.
Sure.
And I can't accept that somebody here will say, well, I'm a woman, so now I go and compete against women.
It's not that simple. If they've already gone through puberty, then they have to go on the
Blockers.
opposite hormones,
Yeah.
and it takes
Hormone blockers.
their testosterone level in the case of a man would have to be below a certain level. If they're caught before puberty and they've been on puberty blockers, then they would just take the replacement hormones, and they would until you hit puberty, you're basically indistinguishable from the opposite sex, except for the parts, of course. But then afterwards, you would take the replacement hormones, and you would essentially,
So you wouldn't develop fully as a man in terms of
Exactly.
the strength and muscle
It
and
just
The muscle man.
seems like I'm penalizing
height.
women
yeah.
for a minority
Women
of
have
men.
been penalized in many levels.
Well,
Well,
And we continue to be so.
So the other side of this, though, is that there are a certain small percentage of people who have this condition where they are not kind of mentally, spiritually, personality-wise in alignment with the bodily equipment they've been given, and that's a real problem if you have to live with it. And
Yeah, but some
so
of-
the question is, do we respond to that in a compassionate way, or do we respond to it by just marginalizing and excluding those people? And that's what the right wing wants to do.
but if, in my mind, the whole bathroom issue can be solved.
Oh, easily.
If you go to Europe, you have water closets. It's a room. It's like my house. I do not have a men's room and a ladies' room.
Right.
I have all gender bathrooms in my house.
Yeah, I have a water closet.
Do you have
Yes,
one?
I do, yes, all
Whether
gender.
Glenn comes over or you come over, you use the same bathroom. It's a door, it's closed.
So let me
Looks
ask
great.
this. In
Opaque?
co-ed
Yeah.
dorms, the co-ed dorms, men and women use the bathrooms together, right?
Yes, but
Okay.
they're water closets when they use them
Right,
together.
but what's the problem then? Why is that okay?
It's not communal. We grew up in a different age, but it's not like you walk in and there's men at the bathroom
I
stalls.
remember seeing that when I was in college going into co-ed dorm. Why do we have urinals in the bathroom? I don't have one in my house, and most men are able to urinate pretty comfortably in
Into
my...
a
It
toilet.
actually works in a toilet.
It does, it really does. I'm
But see, that's my
shocked,
point, saying if we, in my mind, if we really wanted to fix the problem,
Mm-hmm.
don't have a men's room and a ladies' room.
Right,
Right.
Have water
Build
closets. So you,
compartments and
Yeah.
doors.
instead of stalls,
Right.
but it costs more money to maintain them and to
well,
wash
then you
them.
only have one as opposed to a men's room and a ladies' room, so wouldn't that offset some of the costs?
Absolutely, but to me, it's not cost.
You might.
If it really was cost, we could find the money to put in water closets.
It's policy choices we make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's attitudes.
Yeah, right. So, I don't know, at
And
least...
it's so minuscule in importance compared to real issues that
But
we
that's
face.
that's what they fan that
But
fear
that's what they,
factor
it's like
and
the
that
whole thing
boogeyman
about the
factor
gay
in that.
issue. I don't understand. I have no attraction to you.
I don't have an attraction to you either.
But if Glenn did, it's not going to affect my attraction to my wife.
And it certainly doesn't bother me if that happens,
And I
unless
know
it
I've gotten
bothers
Hasn't
you.
affected
and-
any
I've gotten
my
in trouble for
relationships, no.
saying it, but my attitude is, don't try and make me gay. I won't try and make you straight, and then we'll decide if we like each other.
And
Plain and simple.
Yeah.
I think, though, Al, is that the right has been propagandizing again against the LGBTQ community, and the support for gay people is going down amongst conservatives. So the fight is going to happen anew, all over again. We're gonna keep going over these issues over and over. The Supreme Court seems poised to maybe outlaw gay marriage or.
What a
You
shame.
think?
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Well,
They'll
they
do it.
overturned Roe v. Wade
they'll
after
overturn
50
anything.
years.
So I think your problem is you actually want to solve problems. This
Shame
is
on
not
you.
about solving problems. This is about distracting
Right,
people
right.
with phony problems, so that real patterns of power and exploitation can be perpetuated. That's what's really going on here.
And we should probably, swinging back to the election again, just talk about how Elon Musk spent, what, $260 million to get Trump elected. Miriam Adelson spent over $100 million. One reason only, because she wants Israel to annex the West Bank, and Trump agreed to that. West Bank has nothing to do with Gaza. The completely different power structure, nothing to do with Hamas. But Miriam Adelson wants that territory under Israel's flag. The Kochs and other billionaires have had a heavy hand there too. But those were the two. I think there was one other big donor. But this is an election bought by billionaires.
So we have an oligarchy.
But aren't they
Yeah.
all? I mean, you could argue that
It's more
the
egregious
unions
this
and all
time.
Not
are the
this
same as the
blatantly.
billionaires.
It's not this blatant. And Musk, was it last week or the week before that said anybody who would pass the continuing resolution would get a primary opponent and he would fund them? I mean, that is direct oligarchy.
Blackmail.
That's an extremely wealthy person coming out and saying, I'm going to get the government I want, or I'm going to primary you. And that is not what
It's
America's
bullying.
supposed to be about. That's why when we talk about having to tax wealthy people, this is what we're trying to prevent. Because these guys have too much power, way too much power. And when they can swing their money around and get the government they want, we suffer.
But
But
they're
isn't
not
that what
out
the
for us.
Republicans say about the heavy Democratic donors?
Oh, I don't like the heavy Democratic donors either.
No,
I was going to say, I hear it both.
I
We're
want
talking-
them to be taxed heavily too.
Right. It's
Yeah.
all people making over a certain amount. That's when we had, roads built in the late 50s?
But I come back to a fundamental question. Who's rich? Most people, in my mind, define a rich person as somebody worth or making $1 more than they own.
well, no, I don't
come on,
define it that way.
That's too simplistic.
Yeah.
We talk
No,
about, we
that's-
all agree, billionaires, people that have vast amount of wealth and control and corporations where they impact a lot of people. That's,
So what
that's
do you
a
do?
wealthy
You tax
person.
them back to millionaires?
Well, it's unclear exactly how much you have to tax them in order to reduce the level of power they have. You also have to do some other things like,
Tax their wealth.
well, there's tax the wealth and not just the income, because the income is manipulable.
Right.
But also, you have to have structural changes like getting rid of Citizens United and
Oh,
other
yeah.
things that also serve to
Perpetuate the problem.
perpetuate their ability to exert power.
Right.
And in this connection, this is where I would like to bring in the phony Department of quote unquote governmental efficiency unquote, which Trump has turned over to, I call them Ilana Swami.
Be nice.
So here's the thing about this. It's not a department. Departments of
It's not a government entity.
It's not a government entity. A department is created by Congress with a law that says what the department is supposed to do, and it has a budget to do it with, and it's legally only allowed to do that things related to
But
that.
if these doji people
Yeah.
come up with ways of saving money, is that bad?
Oh, you mean like
They
cutting
won't.
children's cancer
That's the second
research?
lie, is the
that
notion
would
that,
be-
that governmental efficiency has anything to do with this. These guys don't care about
It's a-
governmental
it's a
efficiency.
personal agenda.
Donald Trump has never in his life cared about governmental efficiency. We know how this went last time. He hired and put a fox in charge of every hen house in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
He put people in charge of government departments who had direct conflicts of interest, stood to profit personally from things those agencies did or didn't. Or in some cases, he put people in charge, like the education department with Betsy DeVos. He put someone in there who was opposed to the mission of the department she was heading. And so this is not about making the government run better. It's about building a
Control.
shadow government, a
Yeah.
pseudo government outside the real government and outside any kind of legal accountability. This is how oligarchy grows. This is how authoritarianism grows. This is how dictatorship
Yeah, but
takes
if they
hold.
come up with ideas, like we're going to cut all children's education programs,
Like your
They-
grandmother has to eat cat food because we're going to kill
but
off
they
Social
don't have the
Security.
power to do anything about it.
Why wouldn't they have the power?
Because it's still up to Congress to pass
Oh,
the
and
laws.
Congress is what? Republican?
By what,
Seriously?
2 votes?
Yeah. Well, it'll be entertaining to watch Congress try to pass anything.
Well, I'll tell you
But-
what, sorry to interrupt, but the lesson Republicans learned is that they didn't pay any penalty for taking away a women's right to choose an abortion. And so now they
They'll do
see,
more. They'll do more.
Yeah.
absolutely, they're going to do a lot more.
What do you mean they didn't pay a penalty?
They got
That's-
They got
voted in.
reelected.
Reelected on that. Roe v. Wade was overturned and they still got elected. There was no
Yeah,
accountability.
but it wasn't on one item.
But that doesn't, they took a bunch of people's rights away and they still got elected. And they are like giddy now.
They tax the rich.
There was no accountability.
No, they
Now
don't
they say,
tax the
well,
rich.
all these other things that we wanted to do, like cut Social Security and cut Medicare and cut
We should be able to
Medicaid,
get away with those.
might as well do all that too. We're not going to pay any penalty.
And they're looking at giving the rich another tax break. And the deficit is going up. So, I mean. we're gonna-
Another tax break?
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
Of course.
I thought they were just going to renew what we already have.
Oh, they'll do that, but
Oh,
they want
yeah.
more.
Or they'll just fund the government with tariffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
say-
right. Oh, that's right.
Get ready for $12 eggs and
Yeah.
well,
Well, $12 avocados anyway.
I was going to say, aren't we already there? I mean,
unfortunately, we have bird flu, which is
Impact the egg
causing large
production.
numbers of chickens to be culled in California and some other places.
yeah, my darling bride took me to BJ's and it had limit of how many eggs you could buy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've started to see that.
Yeah, we're running out of eggs pretty regularly in different stores for sure.
Talk to me about immigration.
Okay.
I mean, I heard that we started a wall under Trump, then we tried selling everything off to finish more of the wall, but the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that.
Let's
And now-
talk about some basic stuff with immigration. Immigrants are a net positive for our country, period. Economically, and they add culturally to our country. That's
Some
just
immigrants.
the vast majority.
If you
of
say
immigrants.
90% of the immigrants are good for our country, I'll support you.
Yes.
Okay? That's
And
all
there
we
are
need.
s- there
Just
are-
like
there are-
90% of the white population is good for the country.
Oh, all right.
And the other 10%, well,
Well, the other 10% are in jail, or it should be.
Right.
So to
Well,
me,
we
it's
can
no
agree
different.
on that. We can agree on that.
Right, and the thing is that we sustain our economy with immigration. We don't have a replacement birth rate right now, so we need more people. We just do. We have a lot of work that needs to be done here. A lot of it isn't requiring college education. Some of it is really brutal stuff like picking tomatoes and stuff like that in the fields down south.
construction work.
Or construction work and roofing and other things. We just need more people. And so they fill a vital role there. And you could say, well, they should be here legally, and I would agree with that, and we should probably accelerate a lot of visa programs to make it so these people would be here legally, because right now they can be exploited.
Which is bad for Americans trying to
Bad
do
for everybody.
Which
work
is bad
also.
for Americans, especially American workers who have to compete with that.
See, now I'm okay with saying Congress fix the problem. But the 5% or the 1%, whatever the bad people are, they have no rights in my mind.
But how do you discern
Well-
that? And how do you, I mean, the problem
don't-
is that you let people in. Maybe all of them are doing well for a while and then a few commit some crimes.
Yeah, but you have that in residence too.
Right.
Right.
I have not seen any data that says there's a higher percentage of criminals in the immigrants.
There
Than
is,
in the
it's the
residence.
opposite, actually.
It is
Well,
quite
but
the
I mean-
opposite, yeah.
So you sit there and say, okay, you come into my house, I invite you in for dinner, and you start breaking my furniture. I think I have the right to throw you out of my house.
Oh, sure.
That's
Yeah.
all I'm asking. Is
So-
not
so-
the people that came here, and a lot of them you could argue, well, they came illegally. Yeah, but
But there's no system.
We
It's a mess.
structured things so that there was no legal way
Right.
for them to be here.
and if you think
And-
about it, my grandparents came to Milford and worked to make a better life for my mother and her sisters.
Mm-hmm.
I have a soft spot for people because
Absolutely.
my grandfather got to see his family once a year because he saved every penny he could to send back to Portugal for his family.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he came legally or not, luckily he came legally, I have a soft spot for that. Now you come here and do drugs or sell drugs and commit crimes, I'd like to see your rights stopped right there and
Well, just like anybody else who violates laws, there have to be consequences. And if you are a guest in the country already when you do those things, then expelling you from the country should be an option. If you're a citizen, then throwing you out of the country is really not an option legally. So you've got to have some other form of consequence.
You know,
But-
I spoke with a woman who has come here legally years ago, a citizen, and there's a split in the community about, well, I came in legally, these people
Didn't.
didn't and shouldn't be allowed. So even within first generation or immigrant population that have become citizens, there's that attitude and split. And I think to your point too, back when the election was happening and the Latinos voted for Trump, they didn't see themselves as immigrants. They saw themselves as, well, we're good citizens. We're okay. We're not going to be deported. They had this, and I don't know what his deportation is going to look like. How deep is he going to go? But are these people still safe, you know? Even though they're thinking,
Well,
I'm good and I'm not
I
going to
could
commit a crime.
say that I believe 90+% of the Latinos and immigrants who voted are the good people. Because the drug dealers and all don't typically turn out to vote.
I don't,
Yeah.
Is that something that you know statistically, or
Statistically, I don't know, but
is this
most of the
something you're
people
guessing?
who are from the cartels and all don't seem to be participating in our representative
you'd be
government.
Not civically minded, you don't think?
Right.
There's probably a
Well-
point to that. I don't know for sure, one way or
So,
another.
so there's another aspect of this, which is that, you know, we do have a legal immigration system which has very restrictive quotas, which is in fact not a usable way to get into the country unless you have an employer who's already willing to sponsor you. So the way people are able to come, the de facto immigration system now is the asylum system. And that's a system that we have to allow people who are targets of political, religious, or racial persecution in other countries to come here. And the thing is that when we built that system, we did not fund it to be able to process the number of applications that we are now getting from people who are coming here to file such claims. And that feeds on itself because if once the word gets out, which it has, that it can take years to process a claim, you know, even if your claim isn't very good, you could take a chance on coming here and maybe being able to live and work in the United States for several years before they kick you out. And it might be worth your while to do that. And so, and that's the kind of calculus that people thinking of coming here have to look at when they look at are they going to spend all the money that it's going to cost them to pay the coyotes to bring them here? Because it costs money to come here.
Desperation?
A lot of times it is because, places like Venezuela and its society is falling apart there.
Honduras.
Because of our sanctions and our
And
continued operations.
And the U.S. has a very ugly past history of negative involvement in those countries. And but yes, it is desperation, but it also costs money. And so what we would like to have is the people who are coming and applying for asylum, mostly being people who actually have a valid claim, right? And to get that, you'd have to do a couple things. You'd have to make it take months, not years, to process claims, so that the profit and loss equation is not as favorable to come here with a bogus claim. And you'd also have to provide the Biden administration actually put something in place that requires people who are going to go this route to do a pre-application before they come here, which gives them an assessment of how good their claim is, if everything they said in it was true.
But isn't some of the problem also the fact that when you come into this country, you don't necessarily have the right to work?
Well, yeah, and so if we're going to let people come in, then it doesn't make any sense to let people come in and not allow them to work.
Right.
Right.
But then you get everybody complaining that we're subsidizing these immigrants.
But you're not subsidizing them if you're letting them work.
Right.
Right. If you're letting them work and do work that our economy manifestly needs to have done, like we need to build a ton of housing that we don't have because rents and prices are out
I read
through the
yesterday in
roof,
your
and my
favorite
son
paper, The
can't get
Times,
an apartment in New Hampshire.
the immigrants are contributing $280 billion
Yeah.
to Social Security.
Oh, yeah.
That Social
right.
Security is going to run out in 2033.
Well, that's the other thing, though.
Yeah, Social Security isn't
the
gonna run out.
billionaires should be paying Social Security all year through, not just cap out. They're worried about running out of money.
Yeah.
But
It's,
they cap you out as to how much you can get. Wouldn't they have to raise that too?
Social Security is an obligation of the federal government, which is a sovereign entity that has the power to create money. And so the idea that we'll ever run out of money is nonsense. What we should be concerned about is whether the money will retain its value.
Yeah.
And what actually controls whether the money retains its value is whether the economy produces enough goods and services for new money that gets created to buy. And so as long as we can kind of keep pace so that we're not growing the money supply faster than we're growing the goods and services
Right.
supply, we should be fine as far as not having an inflation problem.
We're getting to a point where if I don't bring up the climate issue, you'll
Yeah.
hate me.
Okay.
I've promised
Well, I
you.
won't hate you anyway, but we'll have to come at it again.
But California, I'm hearing all sorts of the smelt protector, that Newsom is protecting smelt over people, that his policies kept water from going to Southern California.
All of which is ignorant nonsense.
Well,
Where is that information coming from?
Monsieur le Trump.
New York Times. Yeah, but it's not just from right-wing papers. It's not. You're reading it. You're listening to. No matter.
Again, where
I've
is
heard
the
it
source?
on CNN.
Yeah.
And they don't listen to Trump
Right.
very much. I've heard it on Fox, who does. But
But are they framing it
But
in
it's
a
not
way?
true.
But how are they? I mean, the spin on some of these things too is we have to take into
Well-
account. Are they saying smelts over people, or it's just
Yes.
saying,
The water doesn't actually flow from Northern California to Southern California. Southern California gets its water from Colorado and
Colorado
other
River.
places. It doesn't have anything to do with environmental regulations up in Northern California. So, but to make the climate connection, disasters like what's happening to Los Angeles and what happened to Tennessee from that hurricane that came hundreds of miles inland and caused all that flooding, this stuff is getting more frequent and the events are becoming more severe. So same thing with the heat waves and the droughts, and that is being driven by climate change. You can't actually point to any one event and say
So I was gonna
climate
say,
change
are
caused
we really
this.
getting more events,
Yes, we are.
or are the smaller, what used to
Well-
be a small event, now moving
Well,
up?
Both.
well, so here, take hurricanes, for example. We had, in the last 8 years, I think it's 7 Cat 5 hurricanes that hit the United States. The same number that hit the United States in the previous 57 years. So that's probably more a case of a higher proportion of the hurricanes being
Bigger.
really dangerous Cat 5 and Cat 4
Yeah.
hurricanes, because more energy, higher ocean temperatures, more water, heavier rainfall, 3 feet of rain instead of 2 feet, and so on like that. This will continue, and it will continue to get worse, and it is accelerating because the driver of climate change is, of course, excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and the strength of the driving is the difference between the equilibrium level that we had before the industrial age and where we are now, and that keeps going up.
So what do you say to people who say we're again penalizing American industry? Because what I read was China built more coal-fired plants than they ever had.
Well, so China does a lot of things. China does build a lot of coal-fired power plants. China also has made the investments in the technology and the scaling of production of solar panels, which have caused them to drop by about 90% in cost in the last decade. Now, we could have done that, but we chose not to. They did that not because they're good guys. They did it because they want to dominate the 21st century, and they think that dominating the energy sources of the future is a good way to help them dominate the 21st century.
That makes
and we
sense.
are letting them have it because we have a political class, a political culture, and a financial elite that has during all that time has been busy exporting our jobs to China instead of making investments in doing this stuff here.
And also has a lot of investments in fossil fuels.
Right, and we
So
started.
they have a death grip on oil and gas production, and
Right.
they don't want to give that up.
and yeah.
But
so-
now we're saying we want to grow our economy. One way that's holding us back is enough people to do the work.
yeah.
So why is the focus on stopping all 10% or 5% of the bad immigrants and not on getting 90 to 95% of the good immigrants?
You're trying to think logically again.
Yeah, this is the problem.
This is silly,
I
Al.
need people, I have a source of people, I
But
just
then
have
would
to
the
filter
boogeyman
them.
be? What would the Republicans can hang their hat on?
I don't
Didn't they
think-
have a bipartisan bill that
They
they
did.
purposely shot down because then it would make a good political event for the election?
Well, Trump told them that he wanted
Yeah.
to run on immigration, and that's what he did. So he made sure that,
And
that
so
bill
they-
didn't pass.
he made us
But-
cut our nose off to spite our face.
But the reality of it is actually much worse than going after those criminals. They want to deport everybody. Some
I want to be
estimates as high
young,
as
thin, and
20
have
million
hair.
people.
It's not realistic. I mean, deporting everybody is silly.
Well,
Of course it is.
Of course it's
that
silly.
doesn't stop them from trying to do it,
It'll
or at
be
least,
ruinous.
At least, and my suspicion is that it is so crazy that they won't actually do it. They'll just demagogue the fact that somebody stopped them from doing it. Is a more likely scenario.
If you go after the bad people who've been caught, you read the person here that murdered somebody, the person here that I don't see anybody, Democrat or Republican, standing up for them. I'm sorry, you came into my country and
Yeah.
you murdered my brother, my sister, whatever. Get out.
Well, this is what we have police for.
That's
And
what we have
probably
laws for. But
we have laws and police, and
the
and-
other people that we need to grow this country,
and if you
why
want,
stand in their way?
well, and if you want people to respect the law, how about making the ruling class respect the law also?
Oh, well, there you go.
You
What
know?
a concept.
You know, we just put a guy who tried to destroy our Constitution. We just elected him.
What could go wrong? He's a convicted felon, convicted sex offender. Then
Do you
what is
think
it?
part of that is
He's
that
been
people have
impeached
lost
twice.
faith in the government overall?
Well, people have lost faith, and people have been encouraged to lose that faith because the powers that are driving this move towards authoritarianism actually want to do that because
Confusion.
confusion and
Lack of trust.
and fear and this is
See,
this,
I don't
this
understand
is not
the
just how
movement
civ-
saying to pardon the people who attacked our government.
yeah
But on the same time, I see the standard bearer of the Democratic Party saying, I will not pardon Hunter Biden. I would have had
Well-
more respect for Joe Biden if he just said, he's my son.
All right.
Well-
just come out and call the ball and say, he's my son. What would you do for your own kid?
yeah
Would you let him go to jail for countless times?
Well, you could question whether he
would
deserved
Trump
a jail
do that
sentence.
for his kids?
Yeah. Did he deserve a jail sentence for what he did in the context of other things,
I mean,
too?
if he was anybody else, he would not have gotten a jail sentence.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't have happened. It was entirely political. And one of the problems that we have right now is that Trump constantly says things to undermine those institutions. He'll say all the elections are rigged. And then if Democrats ever come out and find that certain areas were rigged, if we come out and say that, then everyone says, well, you guys are just hypocrites. You said Trump was bad for saying that, and now you're saying that.
But Glenn, I thought Trump was the strongest force in making sure we had a clean election last time, not this one. When he come out and said,
How so?
when he comes out and says everything's rigged, if I'm the Attorney General of my state and you're accusing me of having a rigged election, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that it's squeaky, squeaky clean.
But didn't they do that? They investigated.
Well,
Nobody
that's what I'm saying.
found any
To
kind
me,
of blatant rigs or
Having
anything.
him say it's rigged just pushes people further to make sure it's not.
Well, it may have done that to the people who actually run elections, but what did it do to the level of
Trust.
support in the general public for the whole idea of democracy? It's actually damaging for that. To have people believe lies about elections and start to believe that we are not capable as a nation of running free and fair elections, and therefore we should just vote for whichever strongman we like the feel of better.
And there are other things to be concerned about too. I mean, I think eventually we'll find out what degree voter suppression played in this election. Bush passed this law in 2004. I forget what it was called, but it allowed for something called a provisional ballot. If you are not on the election rolls, if you're not on the voter rolls, and you vote, you're given a provisional ballot, and you think you voted, but your vote doesn't count until you're verified as a voter within a district. But you have to initiate that process. And what's happening in a lot of these districts is a lot of people are getting kicked off the voter rolls a month, 2 months, 3 months before the election, and they don't realize that. And then they show up to vote, and they're given a provisional ballot.
But when you say verified, I still don't understand why it's bad that you have to show an ID to vote.
It depends on what ID.
And it depends on whether it is truly possible for everybody to easily obtain an ID.
But Rand, if I want to fly, I'm not getting on a plane without an ID.
True.
If I want to go into a lot
So-
of
But
government
But you don't
buildings,
have to fly. I mean, voting is,
But yeah, if there are a lot of Americans, I'd be willing to bet on this, that who live in this country, have lived in this country all of their lives, and do not have the documentation to prove it. You know,
well,
birth
my mother
certificates weren't always
never had a driver's
produced.
license.
You know, see, and so
But she went down to the town hall. Sorry to interrupt. She went
Yeah.
down to town hall and got an ID.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what bothers me is I hear that some states, if you want to solve the problem, then hire somebody to be there every Saturday, every Sunday, and give out free IDs.
in the black belt in Alabama, they practice voter suppression by the simple expedient of closing the Department of Motor Vehicles offices in that region, so that people who don't have cars have to travel 50 miles to get to a place where they could register to vote.
But see, that's obstructionism to me.
It is.
It's not solved. If the problem is,
they don't
I
care.
want to make sure that people who are voting are legit.
They're not trying to
Then
solve
fix
a
it.
problem.
No.
They are trying to keep
Block.
certain
They're
people
trying
from
to put
voting.
barriers up.
Yeah,
It's- this
Not
is-
not allowed giving water out and waiting in
We're
line.
talking Alabama. We're talking about, you know,
Yeah, but you're talking America. These are Americans.
Yeah, but
you-
Al, this is
welcome to America as it actually is.
Yeah.
they use the talking point that there are illegal voters or people are these people are coming with batches of ballots to be turned in, and it's all just to fearmonger and justify the
to use
things
the
that they
block.
want to do to suppress the vote.
They create a problem
And-
that's not there in order to push through their policies that block.
Voter suppression is a
Because to me, we have the technology. If you
Yes.
really set out to say, I want to fix this problem,
well, we do have the technology, and we could fix it.
you know, you can have your town hall, because every town has a town hall, open every other
They
Saturday.
don't want to fix it. They don't want to fix the problem. This has been going on for decades, too.
Yep.
I mean, that
Yeah.
limited voting places in some of these heavily Democrat or black communities, shorter hours. There's a myriad of things that they've been doing to prevent people that they don't want to vote, the wrong people to vote.
And the elephant in the room here is white supremacy, and the fact that this
Yeah.
is and has always been a white supremacist country that practiced slavery for more
Hundreds
of
of
its
years.
history than it didn't. And after the 14th Amendment, after the amendments were passed to require to grant the vote to black people, the art of preventing black people from voting without having it be about race was raised to a fine art especially in the South, but that's a long-standing pattern, and I'm sorry to tell you, but Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks did not fix this problem back
No.
in the 1960s.
They highlighted
It's a
it.
deeply rooted problem that and huge, powerful parts of our political establishment don't want to solve this problem. They actually want to perpetuate it, and that's why the problem continues to exist.
And there were some laws on the books to look at very specific districts that had a history of this and make them get clearance to change their maps, to change the way they do things. But the Supreme Court struck all that down. So,
Yeah, but we still have gerrymandering.
oh, sure.
Look at Massachusetts.
That's where it came
has
from.
Richie Neal used to have his
Oh.
tip of his district just outside of Springfield, and it went all the way to Milford.
Right,
We used to laugh
Yeah.
and call them the banana region,
yeah.
because they had to dilute out. There's 12 Republicans in Massachusetts, and they had to make sure that they were spread out across the whole.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and now, but because we're in this bare-knuckled struggle for power in this country, it is, I have to ask as a Democrat and a proud resident of a blue state, do I want to fix that problem if the red states won't fix it in theirs? In other words, it's kind of like the question about China and climate change, actually, of why should my side unilaterally disarm? We need to have a sort of an arms control treaty
But
in
it's
our
like
politics.
saying, how do you eat an elephant?
How do you,
One bite at a time.
how do you get to a place we can all live with each other again in this country? And we have to somehow get back to being able to live together and share the country somehow. And we seem to be moving farther away from that. And
More polarized, yeah.
that concerns me, but I don't know what to do, because capitulation to values that I abhor is not an acceptable solution for me.
I agree. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe that it'll work out. I just wonder how long it'll take.
I'm
Good.
afraid, that we're headed in this direction now for the next 4 years for sure. Make no mistake, there's very, very powerful and wealthy people behind Trump. Musk certainly bought him, and Musk himself is supporting very far-right parties in Europe and elsewhere. And so, do I think that a media that is so consolidated now and so owned by billionaires, got Bezos in Washington
Murdoch.
Post. The LA Times is owned by a billionaire who told his staff that they couldn't endorse Kamala Harris, and also said that we should stop talking
But
about
Glenn,
Trump.
Bezos, you couldn't make the claim that he's pro-Trump.
Well,
He just gave him $1 million for his
Inauguration.
That's
inauguration.
anti. That's anti to get in the game.
And how much did he give
Right, exactly.
Biden?
I don't know.
Yeah, nothing.
0.
I don't know.
Exactly. It's
So, what you're going to see is capitulation from all these billionaires, because they're fine with tax cuts, the tax cuts that Republicans will give them. Even the wealthy, liberal contributors, they're fine with all of that. They don't want the left to have any power in this country because they'll be taxed.
Well, maybe we have to totally implode, reach our rock bottom before the rest of the
sort of like
population.
an alcoholic.
Right. I mean, for the rest of the population kind of sees what's happening, how it's affecting them,
Well, and then and I have thought about that, and what concerns me is that if there is, suppose there's a people power revolution, and suppose what kinds of passions will that unleash, and will the people who are so pissed off at the old ruling class, what kind of vengeance will they want?
Well, in 3 months, we'll find out if the war in the Ukraine is done, if all the hostages are home, if gas
Probably won't
prices
be.
have gone down. Probably not, but let's see
Probably
how
not.
far we've gotten. Thanks for joining. To our 6 loyal viewers, thank you as always for joining us. May tomorrow be a better day than today, and may God bless. Good night, all.
Amen.